So, my refutation speech today is aimed against Joshua's claim that building a wall around our borders will be too expensive and impractical to build. Now, he justifies this claim by stating the cost of previous walls, such as the Berlin Wall. He goes on to talk about the discrepancy in the cost of his hypothetical wall and the uncertainty of who will pay for the wall. Now, my claim is that constructing a multi-billion-dollar wall will be beneficial to the economy of the U.S., and this is because it will create jobs and additional tax revenue. It can decrease our national deficit, and it's relatively inexpensive, but will have a high reward. Joshua presented a very weak and ambiguous claim of fact. For starters, it lacks a declarative structure in the main claim because of two separate points he is trying to make. And in addition, we are left to guess our own definition of just what exactly Americans should regard as expensive for our nation, regardless of our real GDP being $16.4 trillion annually and growing, according to the U.S. Department of Commerce. So his first supporting claim mentions the cost of a previous wall built in 1961 in Berlin, and he mentions that the wall stretched 96 miles, but only cost $25 million to build. And so, this evidence seems to attempt to make the generalization that it was an expensive project, but that only satisfies half of his main claim. Because the Berlin Wall was obviously not impractical because it separated East Berlin from Germany and West Germany for 30 years. In addition, he fails to mention that the cost of the Berlin Wall was actually inflated because the wall was rushed and it was built in 4 months, and the first fence was put up overnight. And so, he mentions that the cost of the Secure the Fence Act in 2006 was about $7 billion. But this claim fails to make a parallel case as well because in order to be considered as evidence or justification, he just provides raw data with no inference or no type of direction for his claim. And so the wall will, if we build the wall, will actually employ thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Americans with good paying jobs. And so this alone will increase tax revenue and decrease unemployment. Now his second supporting claim explains specifics regarding the cost, area, and size of the wall Donald wants to build. So Joshua stated that the wall will be 1,900 miles across our across natural habitats and private land. He also states an opinion that the wall will cost up to $25 billion, instead of Trump's proposed $10 to $12 billion. Now, the article he mentions from BBC clearly states that the wall will actually only need to be 1,000 miles long and not 1,900 miles long. And also, that's because there's already natural borders like the Rio Grande. Now, he mentions destruction of natural habitats as a negative ramification, but that does not support his main claim that it would be too expensive. He also mentions Mexico will not pay for it, when in actuality they will pay for it just in other ways. So according to foreignassistance.gov, the U.S. has given Mexico well over $3 billion if you only count from 2007 to 2015. This money could be allocated to the future of building the wall instead of awarding it to Mexico. Also, the wall does not have to be built in just 1 year. It can be spread out over his 4 years of his presidency, and that would help the cost go down. Also, he makes a claim about private land being too expensive, but that's only the case for very few people in Texas, which is just one of the 4 states we're even going to put the wall in. His final claim about how the wall will be paid for is very weak because he makes a non sequitur assumption that the wall will only be paid for by taxpayers and a small visa fee. And this does not follow his main claim because the Patriot Act argues the exact opposite of his claim. And so, in addition, the construction of the wall in the U.S. will see a decrease in cartel and drug trafficking criminals who currently get caught, jailed, and deported from American prisons and jailed taxpayers. Who taxpayers are actually paying for this because current immigration policies cost taxpayers $300 billion a year. And that's according to the National Review. So the wall is relatively inexpensive, but will yield a high reward for just a fraction of the already existing costs. And my claim matters because there's been a lot of misinformation being spread about this issue, which is a major factor to some people in this upcoming presidential election. Thank you.
It's all on the wall.
To the wall.
That's pretty good.
All right, the label of the advocate's claim and the secondary claims is clear. You basically present some counterclaims that are going to be the structure for your argument. I guess they're going to apply particularly to the claims as the advocate presented them. That's okay. Again, I think that's a little probably premature. You can make those arguments on the individual points. There's a general criticism about the way the argument was developed in the first place because there seems to be a lack of declarative statements in some of those points, and you argue that there's not really a standard, for example, of what constitutes expensive. The whole Berlin Wall comparison, I don't know how valuable it was in the original argument. You spend a lot of time dealing with it. Ultimately, the cost issue comes down to it's either going to be the $10 to $12 billion that Trump says or the $25 billion that the advocate says. So the question really should be, is $12 to $25 billion too much? And you've got a good answer later on in the argument that says illegal immigration is already costing us $300 billion. We're going to be saving money in the long run, and we don't have to pay for it all in 1 year. That seems like a pretty straightforward answer instead of having to get involved in these convoluted comparisons. I think that you lost your signposting about the middle of the speech, so I'm kind of following what the issues were that you presented without necessarily having the claims. And again, we're back to the cost issue there, and there's a dispute about how long the wall actually has to be. Again, I'm not sure if that's the thing that's going to make the difference between the $10 to $12 billion or the $25 billion that's being estimated. And you don't really explain it either, so I think that's a little bit of a problem. The argument about habitat destruction, I think where you in essence say that's not the same thing as expensive. That might be true. It's not a financial cost, but it is a cost. So I think that's maybe a little bit problematic as an answer. It feels insufficient. The idea that Mexico is going to end up paying for it in some way, shape, or form, you in essence say, look, we currently give Mexico $3 billion a year. We could use that money instead for paying for the wall. And it sounded like there was some other plan that was being discussed there, but it never became very clear in your argument. We're back to the other argument, which is in the long run, illegal immigration is going to cost us a substantial amount of money, and the wall is going to prevent some of that, and that's what's going to produce the economic benefit. There's a lot of assertion about jobs and how people are going to be paying taxes as a result of this. None of that gets documented. That's all asserted on your part. So if you really want those arguments to be considered, I think you need to take those a little bit more seriously and provide some data on them. All right, thank you.